Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando Leduc, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in.
All right, saw a couple friends of mine on that little sizzle reel.
Did you?
Yeah, Joey Coleman, known Joey for 15 years, really close friends with Joey and his wife Barrett. And then I saw Gino Wickman on there. Gino and I have been in a couple masterminds together from the EOS traction world.
So, yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to have you on. I was reaching out, and I'll tell you selfishly, I was like, I really wanted to have you on because I really wanted to just ask you questions that I'm like, another reason why I love podcasting, because you can really deep dive into like things that you want to know about. So I'm going to be selfish in this podcast, and I'm going to ask questions, that are going to help me, but I'm sure will help other people in the meantime. If you guys don't know who Cameron Herold is, you guys are living under a rock. This guy wrote Vivid Vision and has been, an advocate for COOs and the second in commands for what, 20 years plus?
Almost 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got introduced to him by my friend Lewis Scott, who I talk about often, who's running 8-figure firm. And he recommended the book, and I was like, wow, okay, what a great place to start any entrepreneurship, and what a great place to start this podcast, right? On Vivid Vision and why it's so important. So when you came up with this Vivid Vision concept, where were you? Were you on a mountain?
Interesting. So I was a part of an organization. Probably the very first real mastermind that I joined was called the Young Entrepreneurs Organization, or YEO. It's now called EO, for the Entrepreneurs Organization. And I was a member in Vancouver, Canada, back from like 1995 through 2000. And I was invited down to a lunch with 120 other entrepreneurs. Only 20 of us went. The other 100 were too busy to show up at this lunch. And it was a high performance sports psychologist who was an Olympic coach that was going to be meeting with us to talk about how he coached Olympians in visualization and how we could take that concept and bring it into the business world. So it was at that lunch that I was exposed to the power of visualization. Then we really got into the areas around quantum mechanics, got immersed in the book, The Secret, and really started to kind of understand vision and manifestation, but also the execution that you have to put behind it. I was scaling a company back in those days, which was a barter company. It was a private currency, similar to what Bitcoin is doing. We did it 30 years ago, sold the company for $64 million back in 2000. And we had 30,000 companies using our digital currency instead of the US dollar. So I used that visualization process to align the people, the team, our suppliers, and our clients. And one of the guys in my forum was building a company at the time called the Rubbish Boys. And he wrote what he called his painted picture, which is what I initially called the Vivid Vision concept. And that was Brian, who changed over the company from the Rubbish Boys to 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And I actually joined him in the fall of 2000. He handed me his Vivid Vision, or his painted picture. It was a 2-page description at the time of what his company looked like, acted like, and felt like in 2003. And I read it and I said, I know how to do this. And he said, I have no idea how to make it come true. So I joined him initially to coach Brian, ended up becoming his COO. And then 6.5 years later, we went from 2 million in revenue to 106 million in revenue. I was employee number 14. When I left, we had 3,100 employees system wide. So we'd really scaled that brand. And that was where I really saw the power of that. But I left 1-800-GOT-JUNK 18 years ago. And now I've been coaching high-level companies all over the world. Lewis Scott, you mentioned, I used to coach Lewis, taught them the Vivid Vision concept for his old company. But I've been paid to speak on that concept and all the other business stuff in 29 countries now.
It is remarkable when you get clear about what it is that you want. I've been listening to a lot of David Nagel lately, and his podcast on the mindset, podcast, but it just really knowing where to go. Here's where I'm going to get a little selfish with my questions. When you're bringing on a number 2, right? How important is it? And not necessarily how important is it, but when you're looking for that right person, what are the stages that you're going through to try and find that right person, right? For the right seat?
Yeah. Let me back up to kind of the reason we start a company in the first place. So entrepreneurs start a company for one of only three reasons: to give us money, to have that sense of accomplishment that we've done something so we can have that feeling of pride that we normally didn't get in the school system where we were told we were terrible students, or to have free time to be able to do whatever we want whenever we want. And at some point, your business gets to a stage that if you bring on a second in command, you can leverage yourself to work in your unique ability, to work in your zone of genius. You can have someone else who knows how to do it, like I did when the entrepreneur didn't, who can actually make your vision come true for you. Or they can take so much off your plate that they can give you, your life back to spend time with yourself and your spouse and your kids, your friends. So there's some reasons why you will do that. When you're then looking to bring on that second in command, one of the biggest mistakes I see is people putting a big title on a small role, right? Just because they're your second in command doesn't mean they need to have the COO title. It might be a vice president of operations. It could be a director of operations or an operations manager. It's someone that's going to be your yin and yang, someone you're going to rely on and give a lot of those operational duties to. But the title should match the amount of strategic insight they bring into the company, the amount of P&L responsibility that they have, the amount of autonomy that they can have day to day, meaning they can just show up and do their job. You don't have to delegate anything to them. The amount of people and partners they can bring into the company with them because they've built companies before, and the amount of strategic insight they bring. So those things tend to be where the title comes in, right?
So you can have a second in command, not necessarily have a COO. It's just somebody that can,
Correct.
Yeah.
If I was, in fact, if I was to rename the COO Alliance today, I'd probably call it something like the Second in Command Society or something, because we have second in commands who have the COO title, the president title, VP Ops title. We've got some that have the CFO title, but they're truly the second in command of the CEO. The reason I started the organization, there were tons of groups for entrepreneurs. Even Eight Figure Firm is a mastermind community for the CEO of law firms. Well, what about for the COO of law firms? I've got all these COOs of law firms that are members of the COO Alliance because there's nowhere else for them to go and learn. And they don't want to be around the entrepreneur. They need to actually, you take a COO and talk about recruiting. They want to talk about recruiting and interviewing and hiring and onboarding and behavioral, profiling for 8 hours. The entrepreneur goes, oh, we need the right people on the bus. And they think that's a talk about recruiting, right? So yeah, different groups.
And in your group, are you guys obviously have created a system in how to find the right people to make sure that you're not going through, I guess, a slew of 200 applicants, right? To make sure that you can get to the right person
in hiring the COO?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's systems in place to really understand first yourself as the entrepreneur. So as an example, just because you meet some woman on the street who used to be married doesn't mean she'd be your perfect wife. She might have been a good wife for somebody else, but she might have different hobbies. She might have different personality profiles. She might have different financial needs. She might have kids or not have kids. She might be at a different stage of her life. So the fact that she's been a wife doesn't mean she'd be a good wife for you. To find a good wife or a good partner, you have to understand yourself first, right? What are you looking for? What makes you tick? Who are you as a human? And how do you find a partner that matches you, right? So in the business world, it's very similar. When Brian, as an example, was looking for that second in command, he knew he wasn't good at operations. He knew he wasn't good at culture. He knew he wasn't good at interviewing and hiring and onboarding of people. He knew he was terrible at leadership development. He knew he didn't know anything about marketing and PR. Was getting good at guerrilla marketing, but that was really his zone. Had no idea how to franchise something. And I came along and knew how to do all those things and had done it 3 times before. And Brian was already my best man at my wedding. So we had this unfair advantage that we'd known each other for 4 years. He knew all of my skills. He knew that we meshed as humans. And I had the skills to his weaknesses. So the first step to looking through all these hundreds of resumes isn't to look at the hundreds of resumes. It's to understand yourself first and look at what are you balancing out. Then I get all the resumes being submitted and I still don't look at them. I email people back and I say, thanks for your resume. I'm not going to read it yet. Please read the vivid vision of what our company looks like, acts like, and feels like 3 years in the future. Please read this recent article of us in the media. If this sounds like the kind of company that you want to help build, reply with a 2 to 3 minute video of how you can make our vivid vision come true. If we like your video, we'll bring you in for a group interview. So I'm not going to waste time with the hundreds of submissions until I know that they like our future, they like our vision, and I get a good cultural vibe from them off of that video. And that's the same for anybody I'm hiring.
Yeah. How much does that weed out people?
Well, it weeds out 80%, which saves you so much time to have your HR people wasting time reading resumes of people that don't even like the future of what you're building, or they're not the cultural match. So what I try to do is eliminate 80%. And then I bring the people that I like their videos, I bring them into a group interview, and I'll interview 6 to 7 people at the same time, in person, over Zoom, hybrid, it doesn't matter, asking them a bunch of general questions to see who I vibe with, to see who has that kind of energy that we're looking for in that role. If I like their energy and if I like their video, then I'll look at their resume. And if they have the skills to do what we need them to do, then we'll bring them in for the first of a few different one-on-one or panel interviews to really grill them. I actually cover that in my newest book called The Second in Command. I outline the actual interview and hiring process for the COO.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's the book?
It's called The Second in Command. It's how to unleash the power of a COO. It's by far my favorite. It's my best content of my 6 books.
I'm definitely gonna pick it up for sure. So,
I know you do a lot. You do a lot around the legal industry, right? So
yeah, I do.
Just in the legal space, as a perspective, I've coached the CEO and the COO for John Berry Law, for William Mattar's Law Group, for George Sink out of South Carolina, for Seth Bader and Louis Scott. And then I've coached Jason Hennessy and Scott Schrum from Hennessy Digital. I coached Arnie Malum, who used to run CJ Advertising, and now I coach Chad Dudley, who owns CJ Advertising. It's all these people in the law space that are looking to understand how to unleash that power of their COO. So I've got some kind of good domain expertise to speak to if you want to ask about that too.
Heck yeah. So when you're bringing on, how much are you creating deals with these second in commands, or are you paying them a salary straight out, or what are some of the deals you've seen?
Yeah, I'm much more in favor to pay people properly for the role that they're doing. And if there's a long-term incentive package, it has to be tied to retention and to be tied to what matters to the owner. Profit sharing is rarely what matters to the CEO. The CEO is more often trying to build the economic value of the entire company. So if you're going to have somebody and you want to retain them, then you might have something where you allow them to buy in, or you allow them to earn stock, you allow them to earn options, but you don't have to give away the farm to hire great people. But you should pay them at about 80th or 85th percentile of the bell curve, and give them 5 weeks paid vacation, including their sick time. If you're in North America giving less than 5 weeks paid vacation, you suck as an employer, right? Anybody who's doing 2-3 weeks, none of us would ever let our kid go work for a company for 2 weeks vacation. So why would we ever build a company and do that with our people? So I'm more fall in line with what happens in Europe and the rest of the world, where it's 5-6 weeks paid plus the government holidays. Pay them very, very fairly. They're not going anywhere. And then what I do is I care more about their life, their relationships, their family, which gets them to care more about the business than they've ever cared about before.
Which is amazing. You're looking at what, $400,000, $500,000 a year?
No, I'm glad you asked that, because for a true COO, you're definitely plus 300,000 a year. For a vice president of operations, you're kind of in that 180 to 300 range. For the director, you're in about the 120 to 180 range. Ops manager, you're in the 80 to 120 range. When I was the COO for 1-800-GOT-JUNK, my comp was 315,000, but that was 18 years ago. So, you're in the right range. It drives me bonkers when I hear of a CEO who's got a COO working for them, and then I find out that the COO gets paid, 120 grand a year. That's not a COO. And so they're misaligned with what they want the person to do. And they're frustrated going, oh, this person doesn't have the strategic insight. Well, yeah, because you didn't hire a COO. You hired a director. So a director, you're telling what to do. A vice president, you're deciding together what to do. A C-level is telling you what needs to get done, and you're allowing them to do that because they've done it before. So when you're getting that level of P&L responsibility and strategic insight and autonomy, you pay for that, but you also usually get a 3 to 4 times lever off that person's comp, right? If you're paying them 400 grand a year, they're generating $1.4 million for you, out of the gate. The other thing to remember when you're hiring somebody senior, people often get worried, oh my God, it's $300,000 a year. Yeah, but you're not paying them that tomorrow, right? You're paying them $25,000 a month for 12 months, or you're paying them $12,000 per payroll period. So it's really $6,000 a week. You can find a way for them to save you or make you $6,000 a week. So you kind of put the game in place to have them deliver that value right out of the gate. But we tend to get worried about the big number, forgetting about the big impact that they're going to have too. In fact, even for our COO Alliance members, when we do our monthly mastermind calls or our in-person events that we run every year, we have our members list all the big ideas they're getting during the event. Then I have them put a dollar figure beside it as to how much money is it going to make their company or how much money will it save their company. And that helps them prioritize, but it also shows them the ROI that they're getting from membership.
So here's a fun question for you. At what point do you let somebody go if they're not performing, right? Because you got to give them enough time.
I talk about that in the book, The Second in Command. It's the final chapter. I call it When the Party's Over. So there's a couple components. Let me start with your question, and then I'll backdoor into the second part of the question, which is they're not performing. So at some point, your company is going to grow, and it might double in size. A mid to senior level person can only handle 2 doubles in a row before the company is too big for them to do the third double. So let's say they come into your company and you're running a firm at 10 million in revenue, you get to 20 and you get to 40, it's too hard for them to stay in that role at 80. It's just so substantially different unless they've continued to grow their skills and their confidence and their connections. So you tend to want to look to be replacing people after 2 doubles if they're in that same role. The other thing to look for is if the culture shifts, right? If all of a sudden they get to a different stage in life where they just can't culturally align with the organization or stuff is happening, and then the party can be over. The flip side of that is I have entrepreneurs saying, oh, well, I'm hiring somebody and I won't know for about 30 days or 90 days if they're the right person. And I'm like, well, that's because you suck at interviewing. If you actually knew how to run a proper interview process, you knew how to run a proper filter process, you knew how to do TORC and the group interviews, you would know so much about that person the day that they showed up for their first day that there'd be nothing left to learn. But because you suck at interviewing, you're giving yourself this 90-day out, but there's a danger there that putting that wrong person in can cost you way more than the test period is.
Yeah. So your solution is to make sure that the stuff is getting handled on the front end and not in.
Yeah, and it's the reason why most entrepreneurs say business is difficult is they don't have the basic business skills to run a business. They usually have domain expertise for let's say that they're running a marketing agency. They're usually really good at marketing, but they're bad at interviewing, they're bad at running meetings, they're bad at situational leadership. They've never been trained in coaching. They've had no training around time management, priority management, project management, handling conflict, delegation. So they suck at all the soft skills of leadership, but they're good at their domain. So they come in every day going, oh, business is so hard. It's because you suck at running a business. It's kind of like a kid going off to play Little League baseball. If you don't teach the kid how to hold the bat and how to toss the ball and how to catch the ball, they come home from Little League and they go, Daddy, baseball sucks. It's like, no, Johnny, you suck at baseball, right? Baseball is, you follow? So I think if we as entrepreneurs recognize our job is to grow the skills and the confidence and the connections of our people so they can actually lead people and lead teams and get results through others, then business becomes very simple.
Let me ask you a question on this end. How'd you meet your wife?
We met when I was a speaker at an event back in 2009. My wife's a bit of a sapiosexual, so she likes smart people. And I was coming into an event as the CEO whisperer. I was coming in to coach all these CEOs and speak to them. And she just took notes for 2 hours and observed all these CEOs of companies looking at me as the smart guy. And then I would look at her, I'm like, you're pretty cute. And And this was back in 2009. So that was when you added everybody on Facebook. I'm like, I have 64 friends now. But I was married. She was in a relationship. And then 7 years later, we saw that we were both out of relationships and connected, and off we went. And today is today's our 3rd-year wedding anniversary.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats. Did you guys do assessments? Like, did you?
We have actually, yeah. We've done love languages, we've done Colby profiles, and we've done strength finders to understand each other. And we've also worked from very, very early on in our marriage. We started working with a marriage coach, just as a, you look at athletes have coaches. You take the best golfer in the world and he's still got a coach, and the coach isn't even as good at golfing as he is. Why would you not get a marriage coach or a nutrition coach or a personal trainer? So we got a marriage coach very early out of the gate. And we wrote a vivid vision for our marriage. So my wife and I took about 10 areas: fitness, vacations, friendships, confidants, lovers, use of substances, diet, vacations, all these different areas. And we went off separately and wrote a bunch of bullet points that would matter to us in our marriage. Then we came back and had dinner together, and we merged all of our points together, debated some, argued about some, threw some out, kept some in. And we ended up with a 5-page document that describes us as a married couple. It expires at the end of this calendar year, because we wrote a 3-year vivid vision for our marriage. So in October, November, we'll go away on a retreat somewhere again, and we'll write our next 3-year vivid vision for our marriage, which will be, December 31st, 2028. How are Cameron and Ashley showing up? And then we look at that and figure out, how do we make all those sentences come true?
Wow.
It's just living with intention, right? It's living, and it's, vision without execution is hallucination. Thomas Edison said that you can't just write a vivid vision and expect it to come true. You have to reread it. You've got to commit to it. You have to share it with a marriage coach. You got to share it with your friends. It's up on her website. Like, we share our vivid vision of our marriage with the world, so that the world can help us make it come true.
Wow.
And then I have one for myself, as I have one that I wrote just for me, that describes me as a dad, as a friend, as a lover, as a confidant, as a human. And it's just, who is Cameron Herold? And my kids see it, my friends see it. So I'm living very much with that intention of, who I am and where I'm going.
Are you reading that daily, or is this like an affirmation?
Every month. If I was doing it better, I would have an audio recording, which I'm getting ready to do. I will literally read my vivid vision to myself, so that I can just listen to it and have, while I'm driving, while I'm working out, waking up in the morning, kind of as part of your morning savers. I co-authored the book, The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, with Hal Elrod. So it could be part of my morning visualization process or my affirmation process. Better than it is.
How many of the things that you wrote in your vivid vision came true?
Lots. In fact, one of the really good exercises when you're running the company, and I teach companies to do this, is take your vivid vision, which is a PDF that has, pictures and design elements and really feels like your brand. I can show you the one that Bader Scott did. It feels like their brand. You can then take it and export it into a Word document. And then every quarter, highlight the sentences that have come true in green, highlight the sentences that you're working on in yellow, and you start seeing the document over time come green. Very similar to building a home. If you build a home, you've got a vision for what you want the home to look like. The contractor creates blueprints and elevation drawings to make your vision of your home come true. The employees work from the blueprints and look at your vision, but they never talk to you, the homeowner, at all. And these employees mysteriously build your dream home. Well, every week that you show up at the property, for the first few months, it's just the land being done and the foundation being built. And then all of a sudden walls go up. And then all of a sudden it's plumbing and electrical and drywall. And, you can start seeing it come true. That's very similar to how you start seeing a vivid vision document come true over 3 years.
I just read this book, Go for Stupid. Have you read Go for Stupid?
No.
Simon, he helps with like excursions and grand events. Like he had scheduled Andrea Bocelli to sing for a couple for, a private event. Anyway, like, but his thing is like,
That's Steve Sims.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've known Steve. Steve and I have been friends for a decade. When you said Simon, I was thinking of somebody else.
Yeah,
When you
Steve,
said
I meant, yeah.
what he designed, I'm like, no, it's Steve Sims from the Bluefish Group.
Yeah.
Steve and I are good friends.
Yeah. So the Go for Stupid, which I thought was, super interesting. How crazy are you making these goals, like audacious and, where you're all like, man, because I think a lot of times when people are creating like a vision, they're only kind of seeing like the ceiling,
Yeah. You make them. So the acronym that I use for SMART is a little different from most people. For me, the S is shared. So you have to set the goal and share it with someone, a coach, a counterpart, a friend, a forum group, whatever. We have our COO Alliance members share their goals with the other members. So there's a built-in accountability. The M is measurable. So there has to be a dollar sign, a number sign, or a percentage sign in the goal. The A is attainable, right? So there has to be some reasonable expectation you can make it come true. Like I could set a goal right now that I'm gonna run a 4-hour marathon in June. It ain't gonna fucking happen. Like my son might, but like I'm not, right? I'm done with my marathon days. I'm not running a 4-hour marathon at 60 years old almost now. So the goal, I would pair that goal back to, is it possible that I can get there? So it'll be a stretch, but it has to be possible. And then it has to be relevant. Like, why am I even working on it? And then I time base it, meaning I decide when I'm actually going to do the work to make that goal happen. So if I'm going to set a goal, I break it down, I project management, and then I look at priority management. And I teach all this in my Invest in Your Leaders training, my online training. Once you take the goal and you break it down and you put the steps into your calendar, you realize, oh, I need to delegate some steps, or I need to outsource some steps, or I need to change the deadline that I'm giving myself because I don't have the time in my calendar to actually do the work that's necessary. So that's how I make sure the goals happen.
Here's a question for you. If somebody comes in, and I'll talk about a guy who I brought in, Cannon, who's really great at organization, right? Like organizing, that's just his brain, right? But he doesn't necessarily have the qualifications or experience in the COO space. How would somebody get that experience?
Some of it's over time. Some of it is, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So the more COOs or second in commands that he's spending time with, the more his skill level will update itself, right? He'll just be around people that are thinking at a different level, that are supporting at a different level, that are, so even in our COO Alliance members, we use an app called Circle. They're constantly asking questions and the other members are all helping each other. I'm not there teaching people how to be COOs. It's the other 180 plus members that are helping each other become better COOs. Louis Scott used to come to our in-person events when he was the COO for Bader Scott, the law firm. He would come to our in-person events and learn from the other COOs that were in the room. So he was sometimes teaching them. He was sometimes learning from them. Sometimes he was just shedding his imposter syndrome and gaining the confidence that he knew what he was doing. So it's kind of from that, just being around that.
I love that.
And then you have things like books and speakers, right? We have a speaker every month that comes to our monthly mastermind. So we bring in some of the best speakers in the world. We have an AI innovation call every single month. We have a speaker that comes in to speak about different AI tools. We have the 2 in-person events every year. So it's just members that are being around other COOs is how you up-level your game. Same for entrepreneurs too, right? I do a group coaching call where I have a bunch of CEOs on a call and they hear what the other COOs are asking. So sometimes a COO will ask a question, I'll be like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that. But I'm now learning just from hearing how the group approaches that.
Does it matter if you bring in a COO that doesn't necessarily have experience in that particular niche, but has years of COO training? Could you bring somebody in that's like, been in the internet marketing world, but then now wants to get into, legal?
Yeah, I call it ideas having sex. That you're going to take, let's say that you asked a question, you might get a partial answer from somebody in a marketing agency, a partial answer from somebody that runs nursing homes, and a partial answer from somebody in the auto body sector. And those 3 answers have a little idea, baby. And that's exactly what you're looking for. So I think it's very dangerous to only be in an organization like 8-Figure Firm. It's great if you run a law firm to be in Louis Scott's 8-Figure Firm program, to be around all these people running 8-figure law firms, but you're missing the opportunity to learn from somebody running a nursing home and somebody running a marketing agency and somebody running a house painting business. So I think everybody should be in an industry trade group, and everybody should be in a role kind of a trade group, because you learn from that. And then it is classic working on the business instead of working in the business, right? We have members that we had to remind them that, no, your CEO wants you to take this time to work on your confidence and your skills and your connections. This isn't you taking time away from the business. This might be the most proactive time you spend running the business, is working on your skills and your confidence, so that you can delegate more.
Yeah. So is this, and your group is a role specific group, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
CEOs.
exactly. We've got 40% of our members are women, 60% men, 80% of our members are the US, 10% Canada, and we've got members from 15 other countries. Our youngest member is 23, and he's one of the smartest members in the group. He leverages the tech stack and AI like nobody's business. And then we've got this 63-year-old who's got the wisdom of time of scaling a billion-dollar company, but he doesn't understand the AI tools like this 23-year-old. And they jam together like, you know, the 23-year-old is sponging off the wisdom of leadership, but the older guy is sponging off the tech stack. So yeah, because they're in that group and they're able to show up and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm scared, David, because every day this is the biggest thing we've ever done, right? Yeah. I used to coach the CEO of Sprint, right? The 82nd largest company in the United States, Marcelo Claret. I coached his COO, Jamie Jones, for 18 months. Jamie's base salary was $2.7 million a year. I mean, like, I had no business coaching a guy whose salary is 2.7 plus his long-term incentive, plus his bonuses. But Jamie sat down and would ask the questions to learn from somebody who could see the business from a different perspective. When I was coaching Marcelo, the CEO, I've never worked in a telephone cellular business. I don't know anything about the industry, but I could see it from a different lens. And I could give them insights as to how to make the company more entrepreneurial to get ready to merge with T-Mobile. That was valuable for them. So sometimes the insight from your industry is powerful. Sometimes you need somebody who can see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, no, I love that. How do people find you? How do people get involved in the COO Alliance?
Well, I've got the COO Alliance main website is COOalliance.com. And then my personal website, CameronHerold.com, is HEROLD. I have all my 6 books, my Second in Command podcast, Invest in Your Leaders course. It's all there. It's kind of broken down like a link tree. So it's really easy to find.
So what are you working on now? What's your next 3 years look like?
My legacy project. I got 2 boys that are 21 and 24. So my legacy project is getting them done and out the door, and, you know, growing them into these competent, healthy, happy young men. It's funny. I keep telling them that no only means no in the bedroom, that in the business world, no just means you haven't explained yourself, but in the bedroom, no means no. So yeah, I'm spending time making sure that I help them launch, right? They're 21 and 24. My wife and I are traveling the world as nomads. So we've been to all 7 continents together, and we're just trying to find some places around the world that we will spend more and more time in every year, kind of our forever homes. So we think those will be Cape Town, Australia, Byron Bay, and probably Cortina, Italy will be our 3 forever homes. So spending time on that, and then just scaling the COO Alliance, which I love doing.
It's amazing, man. Cameron, I can't thank you enough for being here. What great gems and insights. And for those of you that are out there looking, you know, to scale your business and really step out of the technician seat, got to find the second in command. Got to let go. So
thank you.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Armando.